not all manipulation is loud. Sometimes it doesn't come with anger, threats, or obvious control. It arrives quietly, hidden behind smiles, concern, and friendly words. But slowly, something begins to change. You start doubting your own thoughts. Your confidence fades. Your decisions feel less certain. And the most dangerous part is this. You often don't realize someone is manipulating you until they already have influence over your mind. Because manipulators rarely look like villains. They can be people you trust, people you respect, even people you care about. But once you understand the psychological patterns behind manipulation, everything becomes clearer. In this video, we're uncovering 7 powerful signs someone is manipulating you. Subtle behaviors that can quietly control your emotions, your perception, and your reality. And once you see these signs, you will never look at certain people the same way again. Sign 1. They make you doubt your own memory. One of the most powerful and dangerous manipulation tactics is making you question your own perception of reality. This psychological strategy is known as gaslighting, and it is far more common than most people realize. Gaslighting does not begin with obvious lies or dramatic arguments. It begins quietly, almost invisibly, through small moments that seem insignificant at first. A conversation you clearly remember suddenly becomes something the other person claims never happened. A promise you recall in detail is suddenly denied, as if it never existed. Imagine this situation. You remember someone telling you they would help you with an important project. The conversation felt clear. The agreement felt real. Maybe it even relieved some stress because you believed you had support. But later, when the time comes and you mention it, their response catches you off guard. They pause, look confused, and say, "I never said that." The statement is delivered calmly, almost casually, as if the idea itself is absurd. For a moment, your mind freezes. You replay the memory in your head. You feel certain you heard them correctly, yet their confidence begins to shake your certainty. Sometimes the manipulation becomes even more direct. You're imagining things. You always twist what people say. You need to stop overthinking. At first, you brush it off. You assume it must be a misunderstanding. After all, everyone misremembers things sometimes. You tell yourself it is not a big deal. But then it happens again. Another conversation. Another promise denied. Another moment where your memory collides with their complete refusal to acknowledge it. And slowly, something subtle begins to change inside your mind. You start doubting yourself. You replay conversations repeatedly, searching for proof that you did not misunderstand. You begin questioning details you once felt certain about. Your confidence in your own memory weakens. This is exactly what the manipulator wants. Gaslighting is not about winning one argument. It is about reshaping how you trust your own perception. Once someone successfully makes you question your memory, they gain a powerful advantage. They can rewrite events, deny responsibilities, and shift blame without resistance. When your perception becomes unstable, their version of reality starts to dominate the conversation. The manipulation works because humans naturally want harmony. When two versions of reality collide, most people look inward first. They assume they must be mistaken, rather than assuming the other person is deliberately distorting the truth. Manipulators understand this deeply. They know that if they repeatedly deny events with enough confidence, many people will eventually surrender their certainty. Over time, the victim stops challenging contradictions because they no longer trust their own recollection. This creates a dangerous psychological imbalance. If someone controls your interpretation of events, they also control your reactions. They control the story being told, and when they control the story, they control the outcome. Mentally strong people learn to protect their perception. They recognize patterns. One forgotten detail may be normal, but repeated denial of clear conversations is not. When someone consistently makes you feel confused about things you clearly remember, it is not just miscommunication. It is a red flag that should never be ignored. Your perception is one of the most important tools you have for navigating the world. When someone attempts to weaken that tool, they are not trying to understand you. They are trying to control you. And once you recognize that pattern, the manipulation begins to lose its power. Sign 2. They turn every problem into your fault. Healthy relationships are built on accountability. When mistakes happen, both people are willing to look at themselves honestly. They acknowledge what went wrong, take responsibility for their actions, and work toward fixing the issue together. But manipulators operate very differently. Instead of accepting responsibility, they redirect blame. No matter what the situation is, the outcome somehow becomes your fault. It can start with something small. Imagine you make plans with someone. You clear your schedule, you prepare, and you genuinely expect them to show up. But at the last minute, they cancel without much explanation. Naturally, you feel frustrated. Anyone would. So you calmly express how it made you feel. But instead of acknowledging your disappointment, the conversation suddenly shifts in a completely different direction. You're too sensitive. Why do you always make everything a problem? Suddenly, the focus is no longer on their behavior. The attention moves entirely onto your reaction. Now you find yourself defending something that should never have needed defending in the first place. Instead of discussing why they cancelled, you are explaining why your feelings are reasonable. Instead of addressing the original issue, you are trying to prove that you are not overreacting. This tactic slowly rewires your emotional instincts. The more it happens, the more cautious you become about speaking up. You begin to question whether your reactions are justified. You hesitate before expressing frustration because you expect the conversation to turn against you. Eventually, something even more subtle begins to happen. You start feeling guilty for setting basic boundaries. You apologize just to keep the peace. You downplay your concerns. You tell yourself it's easier to stay quiet than deal with the emotional backlash. And that is exactly the environment manipulators want. They thrive in situations where accountability disappears. If every conflict becomes your fault, they never have to examine their own behavior. They never have to change. Over time, this creates a one-sided dynamic where you carry the emotional weight of every problem while they avoid responsibility entirely. The most dangerous part is how normal it begins to feel. You start apologizing for things you didn't do. You take responsibility for emotions that were never yours to carry. But once you recognize the pattern, everything becomes clearer. Healthy people may disagree with you, but they do not constantly shift blame to avoid responsibility. When someone repeatedly turns every problem into your fault, it is not a misunderstanding. It is manipulation. Sign 3. They use kindness as leverage. Not all manipulation appears aggressive or hostile. In fact, Some of the most effective manipulation is disguised as generosity. A manipulator may go out of their way to help you. They offer support when you need it. They do favors that seem thoughtful and generous. In the moment, it feels like genuine kindness. Maybe they help you move apartments when no one else is available. Maybe they lend you money during a difficult time. Maybe they show up when you're struggling and give you the support you needed. At first, it feels reassuring. You begin to see them as someone dependable, someone who truly cares. But later, something changes. The reminders begin to surface. After everything I've done for you, you owe me. Don't forget who helped you when no one else did. The words may sound subtle, but the message underneath is clear. What once felt like kindness slowly turns into a form of emotional pressure. You start feeling obligated. Suddenly, saying no becomes difficult. Disagreeing with them feels uncomfortable. Even making independent decisions can trigger guilt, because part of you feels like you are betraying someone who helped you. This is where manipulation reveals itself. Healthy kindness is given freely. When someone truly helps you, out of care or respect, they do not keep score. They do not bring it up later to control your choices or influence your behavior. Real generosity expects nothing in return. Manipulative kindness works differently. It is not a gift. It is an investment. The favor is given with an unspoken expectation that one day it will be used to gain influence. And when the moment arrives, the manipulator reminds you of the debt you owe. What once looked like generosity becomes leverage. This tactic works because guilt is one of the most powerful emotional forces humans experience. Most people do not want to feel ungrateful. They do not want to appear selfish or disloyal. Manipulators understand this perfectly. They keep careful mental records of every favor they provide, not out of kindness, but because those favors become tools they can use later. Each reminder pushes you further into a position where you feel obligated to cooperate. But once you recognize the pattern, the illusion disappears. True kindness empowers people. It never traps them in emotional debt. The moment someone begins using past favors to pressure your decisions, their intentions become clear. It was never generosity. It was control, disguised as generosity. Sign 4. They slowly isolate you from others. Manipulators rarely try to control someone all at once. They understand that sudden control would raise suspicion. Instead, they move slowly and strategically, shaping your environment piece by piece until their influence becomes stronger than anyone else's. One of their most effective tactics is isolation. But isolation rarely begins in an obvious way. It often starts with small comments that seem harmless or even protective. I don't think your friend really respects you. Your family doesn't understand you like I do. Those people are holding you back. At first, these statements may sound like concern. It can feel like someone is looking out for your best interests, warning you about people who might not support you. But over time, the pattern becomes clearer. Little by little, the circle around you begins to shrink. You stop sharing things with certain friends because the manipulator has already planted doubts about them. You visit your family less often because conversations about them always seem to turn negative. You slowly distance yourself from people who once provided balance and perspective in your life. This shift rarely feels dramatic in the moment. It happens gradually, one conversation at a time, and eventually, something subtle but powerful takes place. the manipulator becomes the primary voice in your life. When something happens, they are the person you turn to first. Their opinions begin to shape how you interpret situations. Their approval becomes more important than the perspectives of the people you once trusted. Psychologically, this creates dependence. When someone controls your environment, they begin to control your perspective as well. Without other voices around you, their version of reality becomes louder and more convincing. This is why emotionally strong people protect their independence. They maintain connections with multiple perspectives and never allow one person to dominate their entire support system. If someone consistently tries to push you away from friends, family, or people who care about you, it is rarely about protection. It is about control. Sign 5. They create confusion with mixed signals. One day they praise you. They tell you how much they value you, how impressed they are with your work, how lucky they feel to have you in their life. But the next day, something changes. They become distant, critical, cold. The same person who complimented you yesterday now questions your decisions or points out your flaws. The warmth disappears, replaced by silence or subtle disapproval. At first, it feels confusing. You try to figure out what changed. You replay your recent conversations, searching for something you might have done wrong. You wonder if you accidentally upset them or misunderstood something. But this emotional unpredictability is rarely random. In many manipulative dynamics, it is a deliberate form of psychological conditioning. Humans naturally crave consistency. We feel secure when people behave in stable, predictable ways. When someone's behavior suddenly shifts between warmth and rejection, the brain becomes highly alert. You start paying closer attention to everything they say and do. You analyze their tone of voice, their expressions, even small changes in their mood. Your mind begins working overtime, trying to decode what will bring back the positive version of them. Slowly, your behavior begins to adjust. You become more careful with your words. You try harder to please them. You avoid anything that might trigger their negative reactions. And without realizing it, your focus shifts away from your own needs and toward maintaining their approval. Manipulators understand a powerful psychological truth. Confusion creates compliance. When someone is emotionally disoriented, they become easier to influence. Their attention is consumed by trying to restore harmony rather than questioning the dynamic itself. Over time, this pattern trains your emotional responses. You begin chasing the moments when they are supportive, hoping to bring that version of them back. But those positive moments become rewards in a system you never agreed to participate in. And the more you chase them, the more control the manipulator quietly gains. Sign 6. They make you feel like you're always overreacting. Manipulators avoid one thing above all else: emotional accountability. Taking responsibility for how their actions affect others would require honesty, self-awareness, and change. But instead of facing that responsibility, manipulators redirect attention somewhere else. They attack your reaction whenever you express discomfort, disappointment, or frustration. The focus quickly shifts away from their behavior and onto how you responded. You're too dramatic. You're overthinking everything. Why do you make everything such a big deal? On the surface, these phrases might seem harmless. Sometimes they are even delivered in a calm tone, as if the other person is simply trying to help you relax. But beneath those words lies a powerful psychological message. Your feelings are invalid. Instead of acknowledging the problem you raised, the manipulator reframes the situation so that your emotional response becomes the real issue. The original concern disappears from the conversation, replaced by criticism of your sensitivity. At first, you might try to explain yourself. You clarify why something bothered you. You attempt to communicate your perspective more carefully. But if this pattern repeats often enough, something deeper begins to change. You start questioning whether your feelings are justified. You hesitate before speaking up. You replay situations in your head, wondering if you really are being too sensitive. Gradually, you begin filtering your emotions before expressing them. And eventually, silence starts to feel easier than confrontation. This is exactly the environment manipulators depend on. When someone begins suppressing their own emotions, boundaries become weaker. Problems remain unaddressed. The manipulator's behavior continues without challenge because the person affected no longer feels confident enough to speak openly. People who doubt their own emotions rarely defend their boundaries. The result is a dynamic where one person controls the emotional atmosphere, while the other constantly adjusts themselves to avoid criticism. But here is the truth that manipulators hope you never realize. Healthy people may disagree with your feelings. They may see situations differently. They may even challenge your perspective during difficult conversations. But emotionally healthy people do not try to erase your feelings. They do not repeatedly shame you for expressing them. They do not make you feel foolish for reacting to something that genuinely affected you. Your emotions exist for a reason. They are signals that help you understand when something feels wrong, unfair, or uncomfortable. When someone constantly dismisses those signals, they are not helping you become calmer or stronger. They are training you to ignore your own instincts. And the moment you begin trusting those instincts again, their influence begins to lose its power. Sign 7. You feel drained after interacting with them. Sometimes manipulation is not obvious in the words someone says. There are no clear insults, no obvious lies, no direct confrontation. Instead, the manipulation shows up in something far more subtle: energy. Think about the people in your life for a moment. Some conversations leave you feeling stronger. After talking with them, your thoughts feel clearer. Your motivation increases. You feel understood, supported, and mentally lighter. Those interactions add something positive to your life. But manipulative people often leave behind a very different emotional footprint. After spending time with them, you notice something feels off. You feel exhausted. Not the normal kind of tired that comes from a busy day, but a deeper mental fatigue, the kind that makes it difficult to focus or think clearly afterward. Sometimes you feel confused. The conversations seem normal on the surface, yet your mind keeps replaying pieces of it later. Certain comments linger in your thoughts, making you question what they really meant. Other times, you simply feel mentally foggy, like your clarity has been drained without you fully understanding why. This reaction is not random. Manipulation creates constant psychological tension. Your brain is working harder than usual during the interaction. It is quietly processing subtle pressure, shifting emotions, mixed messages, and hidden intentions all at once. Part of your mind may be trying to keep the conversation calm and cooperative. Another part may be sensing something underneath the surface that does not feel genuine. That internal conflict consumes mental energy. It forces your brain into a constant state of analysis and self-monitoring. You start measuring your words more carefully. You watch their reactions closely. You adjust your tone, your responses, even your body language to avoid triggering negative reactions. Over time, this mental effort becomes exhausting, and the most important detail is that you may not always be able to explain the feeling logically. You might walk away from the interaction thinking, "Nothing bad really happened. So why do I feel so drained?" The answer lies in something deeper than conscious reasoning. Your intuition is picking up signals your mind has not fully processed yet. Humans evolved to read subtle emotional cues. Changes in tone, facial expressions, inconsistencies in behavior, and hidden hostility can all trigger internal warning systems without us fully realizing it. Your nervous system recognizes these signals long before your conscious mind forms a clear explanation. That is why the exhaustion appears even when the manipulation itself feels difficult to prove. Your body knows something your thoughts are still trying to understand. This is why paying attention to emotional energy matters more than most people realize. Words can be controlled, intentions can be hidden, but the emotional impact someone leaves behind is much harder to disguise. Healthy interactions usually leave you feeling respected, calm, and mentally balanced. Even difficult conversations with emotionally mature people tend to end with clarity and mutual understanding. Manipulative interactions feel different. They leave behind confusion, tension, and fatigue. If you consistently notice that someone leaves you feeling mentally drained after spending time with them, it is worth taking that signal seriously. Your energy is one of your most honest indicators of what is happening beneath the surface. And more often than not, that signal is telling you something important. Your energy rarely lies. If you start noticing these signs in someone around you, don't ignore them. Manipulation only works when it stays hidden. The moment you become aware of these patterns, the dynamic begins to change. You stop questioning your instincts. You stop giving away your emotional control. And most importantly, you start protecting your peace. Not every person who enters your life deserves access to your mind. Learn to observe behavior, trust your perception, and maintain strong boundaries. Because the strongest people are not the ones who control others. They are the ones who refuse to be controlled. Obsidian mind. See clearly. Think deeply. Stay untouchable.